Mentor Garden was an open forum. Anybody who had been to Asia could speak. We sat around the fire and listened, and we had short meditations. If there was no speaker, we had longer meditations. Everything was informal, and any knowledge was accepted. Only one thing was barred: speculation. Speculation was the one evil. We had many great Buddhists come and go. They all said the same thing: speculation was the one evil. This was before the days of Zenism. Zenism is a term coined by Merchant Sam for, I don't know, I won't mention any names of any books, but it's sort of like thoughts about Zen. Yeah, it's sort of like that. But there's another bit where I like the title of the paper actually as much as I like the paper. Where is it? I guess it disappeared into the void.
Which is full.
Which is full. Oh, here it is.
Came back out.
The title of the paper is called, it's an article Murshid wrote for a Buddhist journal. How to be a Buddhist? How to be a Buddha. Lord Buddha never actually taught Buddhism. He sought to revive the Arya Dharma, which means noble wisdom or even ageless wisdom. He said that all people had perfect enlightenment, but did not know about it. He laid down certain fundamental principles, but these are fundamentals only insofar as they are expressed in words. They cannot be called absolute, for words are creations of minds at certain stages of cosmic evolution. It may be difficult, if not impossible, to express in words what belongs to other stages of evolution. This was Mercer's consistent approach to all the religious traditions, and particularly to the literature of all the religious traditions. On one hand, he read voluminously and he wrote even more voluminously. So much of Mercer's writing has never been published. And on the other hand, he constantly emphasized that words are very much only relative. And words were of very little usefulness unless they related to some experience that a person could have, that you could relate to practically. And so in that sense, when he ever translated words from the Buddhist tradition or from the Sufi tradition, from Arabic, from Hebrew, he translated them as living experiences. You know this often quoted Al-Ghazali. Sufism is based on experiences and not on concepts, or Tasawwuf really is based on experiences and not on concepts. But this was an approach, his entire approach, which was an approach that was shared by other people at that time. Wait for it and don't blink. The approach was called general semantics. General semantics, which you'll read about in Mershid's diaries or in Mansur Johnson's wonderful book called Mershid, it is actually worth exploring, which I did do some years ago for a paper I wrote for the American Academy of Religion. It's sort of like the ideal joke. You write an academic paper deconstructing words themselves for the largest of academic religion scholars in the world, about 12,000 people. And they took the paper, interestingly. So, I don't know if they blinked when I read it. But for instance, Murshid, in this little article for the Buddhists, He talks about the word sama. Sama drishti is a Buddhist concept. Sama usually is translated right thoughts, right speech, right actions, and so forth. He says the word sama, which appears in each of the elements of the Eightfold Path, really means highest, and the word is related to our word summit, or universal, not right as opposed to wrong. So true Buddhism does not propose any right way of life as against any wrong way or ways, but rather a universal way, an all-embracing anatta view, terminating in sama samadhi consciousness of totality. So again, translating everything towards not being a Buddhist and being a proper Buddhist, but actually being a Buddha. Likewise, he translates or begins to translate some of the Asmaul Husna, the beautiful names, and he says he rather was preferring to translate Rahman and Rahim as the compassionating and the compassionated. We are compassionating and we are compassionated. So we can relate to that as a living experience rather than to say the infinite, the all, you put it in some other Platonic universe, and then it's very difficult to understand it as a living experience. So this has been throughout the influence also on my translation. What I've tried to do is similarly from the Aramaic, from the Hebrew, from the Arabic also. Relating to the dances, and this was a piece that I was looking at this morning before I ran into a piece of pole here. Where it says, when we separate the spiritual from the real, spiritual in quotes, from the real or the practical or the, quote, beautiful, we're simply building a concept which of itself is not spiritual. Our thought of God is not divinity. Now we can have many, many beautiful thoughts of God in poetry and express God as the beloved, and we tell stories about all of this, and all of these are wonderful and they engage us. It's just a matter of staying fluid with these words, with these concepts. Otherwise, we're doing what Murshid wrote about in another paper. It's a beautiful expression. He says, otherwise, all we're doing is rearranging the bars of our prison. And we don't want to do that. So whatever concepts we use for ourself, our psychology, all these things, we don't want to simply rearrange the bars of our prison. We want to actually, be changing, be growing. We want to free ourselves, so to speak. Our thought of God is not divinity. It is one of the many thoughts of our mind, and is less than we are. Korzybski is the guy who started the idea of general semantics, has pointed out that the word pencil is not a writing tool. That is pencil. It is a word. The word God is not the divine being, nor is the thought we hold the ultimate reality. Spirituality is beyond word thought. And again, Murshid writes in commentary, I think it's somewhere in the Bolasaki, in June, where Inayatiyya has the saying, words are but the shadows of thoughts and feelings. And Sam comments, yes, there are shadows, and then there are shadows of shadows. And this is, yes, they're all shadows, but some shadows are more fluid, they're more flexible, they point us back to our direct experience. And others take us much further away into, something completely other, where you don't really know what's being talked about. For instance, half the time when people talk about democracy, it's impossible to know what they're actually talking about. You really get down to what are they actually talking about. So a lot of and Murshid was constantly writing about this to all sorts of people. Why are we using words if they don't relate to something that is an agreed experience? It's just we're making political trouble. We're making all sorts of trouble. Has most people here seen the film Dance to Glory of Murshid Sam? Mm-hmm. Who has not seen that film of Murshid Sam? Well, I did bring it actually. So we could try to show it tonight. It's only 25 minutes long. So we'll have a go with it. we'll see if this thing works, besides for as an obstacle. And Murshid says, he's being interviewed in the very first part of this after he's done the Allahu Akbar with the motorcycles and all that sort of stuff. And he says, most people are afraid of the unknown. And then the interviewer says, is that why they're afraid of the spiritual path? The interviewer is like, I've listened to this thing hundreds of times. I can do like imitations of it. It's so funny. Actually, the more you listen to it, it's like, it's astonishing. And it's the interviewer's going, he says, yes, that's why young people aren't afraid, you know, and they know their beat, so they're not afraid of spirituality, so they know they won't want to get beat. And then he says, and then the interviewer goes, I says, but concepts, he says, concepts are so real to them, Murshid. He says, yeah, that's their unsanity. And then the interviewer says, but it's so hard to free them from concepts. Murshid says, yeah. Murshid says, that's why we don't solve problems, because our concepts get in the way of the solutions. So, anyway. To do a stand-up routine. Amrita Cohen, was that him doing the interview?
Yeah.
In a few weeks, actually next week, I'm doing another paper for American Academy of Religion on Murshid Sam on exactly on this point. So it's sort of fun. And also on the dances as a sort of wordless language of experience that Murshid was aiming towards. After he'd gotten fed up with the limits of words, he was aiming towards music and dance as a sort of non-conceptual, experiential language that would bring people together. And in some senses, that is the dances. Once that, you know, the dances are sort of spiritual, not putting spiritual as opposed to anything else, but it's a sort of a experiential Esperanto. Do you speak Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram?
Did you just speak?
Did you just speak Kwanzaa on both sides with each other?
Go into activity
You did.
and move the chairs and be integrated in life and still keep concentration?
You did.
Mashallah.
MashaAllah. I wanted to do a little bit of some practices from spiritual training through music because I mentioned it. I'll just read a little bit and then we'll do a bit of the practice. It's really very simple. The main thing is just following it through and taking enough time with it. You could take a week with each one would be plenty. You could take 6 weeks with each one would be really not good because there's actually no rush. By the end of the whole practice, all you come to is intoning the whole zikr once in the heart.
That's all it takes.
That's all you come to. It's a very, very Zen approach, speaking of Zen. So, you could say, but I wanted to mention before this, I knew Murshid Shamshir very well, and I helped him on his solar energy projects toward the end of his life. Shamshir told me that in addition to the healing breaths, he attributed his good health and long life to having a little bit of chocolate every day. I was riding with him somewhere in San Francisco. We were going to see some economist or engineer, and he pulls out of the glove. He's riding, someone else is driving, and his driver pulls out of the glove compartment. Here's my chocolate for today. By the way, this is in the name of holy digression. Shamshir was actually a very incredible mystic, undervalued by us at the time. He did work in solar energy, he worked in ocean thermal energy, he also worked very deeply in economics. And what was it, late 2008, which is when we had all this hoo-ha, still continuing, it's still, people suffering because of the hoo-ha. I went back and I found Shamshir's book on economics that he wrote immediately after the Second World War, exactly 50 years ago. And it was so like I was reading about today. He explains everything about how this stuff is working and how it could work differently. It is an incredible book. There's hardly anything that is outdated in this book. And he had worked with a different sort of system of economics, where you don't have this sort of casino economy. In Norway after the war, rebuilding Norway. And it's actually very, very practical and could be done. Even alongside of what we currently have, he proposed after the Second World War how it could be done. Because, you know, the U.S. almost went into sort of free-fall recession after the Second World War, because all these guys returned from the war, and, you know, all the jobs were already full because the women were working. And so then there were no jobs. And so then there was no, you know, and the munitions, we weren't making that, we didn't need that many musicians. Musicians until the arms industry revved up again as a big world economy, but we didn't actually need it. And so there weren't the jobs, and there's too many people that knew, and so the thing almost went into free fall. And so there were a whole bunch of people that proposed an alternative sort of system, including Shamsher and H.G. Pearson and a bunch of other people. Anyway, if you're interested in any of that stuff, I mean, I know that everybody is, but I was really wanting to know, you know, how is this stuff really working? Because it is in some ways it's all a mental construct. One sees that more and more clearly. But it's difficult to know how to get out of that mental construct unless you think outside the box. And Shamsher did do that. Now, I can't remember the name of the book, but I'll try to send it to Joachim when he sends out the list. And you can look it up. You can find it used on whatever, ABE Books or Amazon or one of these things, and it's well worth reading.
Bryn, B-R-Y-N, Bryn Bjors.
Bryn Bjors, or sometimes he wrote under Bryn Bjorset.
Can you spell
Which is like
yours?
Byorset, or he sometimes spelled it Beorse, but he tended to write under Bjorset, which was his, I think, his formal Norwegian name. And then he discovered Americans couldn't pronounce it, so he just shortened it to Bjors. Yeah.
And he was a student of Pure Mershid.
He was a student of Pure Mershid Nikon. He was a Mershid under any other name. An incredible guy, adventurer. Worked on the plot to kill Hitler by the Norwegian resistance, and traveled the world and sat with yogis and. You know, he's like our Indiana Jones, really.
Yeah.
He really was. And he was an incredible guy.
Pure Mershid drew amazing people throughout Europe.
I was telling the group last week, where was this? Some week. I traveled too much. Shamsher said, I was around Inayatiyya. You know, all the people thought the more practices they got, the more holy they were. And Shamsher said, you know, I always thought, well, the more practices he's giving me, the more wrong he's seeing with me. I never had a formal interview with Inayatiyya. You know, he gave me, you know, practices while we were sitting in the railway station waiting to go somewhere, and I was going to translate for him, or this or that, or, you know, we're sitting in the compartment with 4 other people, and he's saying, Lord, Ilum. Actually, the practice he gave me, I don't know, he didn't mention it, but he was just, you know, in the actual compartment, he's giving him the practices. So he was just very, very informal about all this. But at the same time, he had this sense of presence that was very deep. I remember, because in addition to having the blessing of working with him on these very practical projects, he's also the one that was my universal worship instructor, because he was a Siraj of universal worship. So some of us he taught us, you know, how to light the candles with presence and how to give the blessing and all the important stuff. Anyway, that was the digression, but let's do something. It was holy digression. One scripture says, in the beginning the Word was God. Actually says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Word relating to wisdom there, but that's another holy digression. One scripture said, in the beginning the Word was God, and another calls Brahma sound, not a Brahma. Now where will you find the sound if the sound is God? If God is seated on the throne and the altar is in your heart, and if the nature of Allah is sound, where will you find this source of sound, if not in your own heart? Therefore, Sufis first develop feeling. Without deep feeling, it is impossible to express oneself spiritually through music. So this is what Murshida Tasnim has been trying to lead you through the whole morning. Just like that. Before one takes even the first lesson in music, zikr practice is necessary to purify the body, and fikr may also be required to purify the mind. Fikr, just breathing the zikr phrase on the breath in the heart. When one feels or hears the divine sound hu within or without their being, then one is ready for musical expression. When one feels or hears the divine sound hu inside or outside of their being, one is ready for the musical expression. But first it is necessary to feel hu, or to hear that sound. Some hear it, but feeling is more important, for through love of sound we come to God, and through identity with sound we become identical with God. One more bit. Why is this? Because the spiritual training through music is not to give one a great voice, not to make you become an artist, nor a singer, nor a musician, although it may do any one or all of these things. The real purpose is that Allah express Allah's self fully through the human body, through your physical vehicle. Therefore, whether you take up singing or play an instrument or devote yourself to dancing, the first step is the same: to feel the divine sound hu within yourself. Then your body is consecrated to be the temple of God, and you are ready to learn self-expression through sound and music. So concentrate on this sound within and without, in your ears and in your heart, and especially in the practice of zikr. He doesn't exactly say how to do this, so we just do it. And that's in general a good approach to Murshid Sam's papers, or even those of Inayat Khan. If they don't tell you how to do it, just do it anyway, and you'll know. And then try it another way. So, as you know, some yoga traditions have this thing of you're hearing the sound and the hu, and so Murshid was somewhat into that. But notice he says it's not that important to hear it, it's more important to feel it. So I think, well, let's begin to sort of breathe hu in the heart. You'll notice an interesting effect of that. It's a little different than breathing a different phrase in the heart. So let's allow ourselves to be comfortable just wherever we are, sitting, the back, so that we can breathe easily, naturally. And if you wish, placing one hand, we can place one hand over our heart, feeling the breath rising, falling. And I'm simply relaxing into the sound hu, feeling, breathing this sound in the heart. I'm feeling the hu, I'm also feeling all the sound around me, the ocean of sound. Feeling as though I'm bathing in this ocean of sound, and that the hu in my heart and the center of that sound is not different. Breathing hu, feeling hu. Whatever I hear around me, just including more and more, not shutting anything away, holding anything away, bathing in that ocean, at the center of which is hu. Hu in the heart. Notice a few things, perhaps. You notice that the hu is sort of hard to hold on to. It keeps trying to escape. If we're breathing in all or breathing out la, it's a lot more distinct edges to that sort of breath practice, those of you that have done this. All la, you really feel like I'm doing something until I let go. With hu, it's just like it can't own it. You can't hold on. It hasn't got those sort of edges to it. Just let it, just keeps widening, expanding. And so Murshid begins with it from there, and then gradually he builds it back, you could say, towards, for want of a better word, manifestation. It's mainly just, maybe we have time to do one or two more of these this afternoon. Mainly just taking enough time with it, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day is really sufficient. A couple of weeks for each step will do it for you. You will notice a difference. It's not the only way to do zikr, but it is a way to change one's feeling, heart view of it. Anything you want to comment on that? I know you know these papers.
There's nothing I can say.
This is always a good time to ask questions, you see, after meditation.
It's so out there that I can't address it. Pardon me. So we'll go the other way. A little fish came home one day from fish school, just swimming as fast as he could, all excited, and said, Mommy, guess what? Guess what happened today in school? She said, What, honey, what happened? We found out about water and ocean. There's some place called this ocean, and it just sounds so amazing. Mama, can we go? Mama, can we go to the ocean? I want to go. And Mama says, my darling, we're in the ocean right now, and the ocean is inside of you too. That's interesting. I didn't mean to bring this out of my room, but I did. Know yourself.
That's a good translation.
Cecilia, do you know Cecilia Twinch?
No.
Amazing lady. We just had this conference in New York at Columbia University, and it was Ibn al-Arabi, Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi. I'm a member of the society. I'm a board member, which means I get more work.
Sure.
So, and this conference was focused on Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi, referred to as the Sheikh. You know, the Sheikh is the leader, the teacher, Al-Akbar, the great teacher. But he didn't call himself that. He's referred to, just like, you know, others might refer to you if they know what it is they're talking about, and they say, that person has Sufic qualities. Yeah, I'm a Sufi. It's something else. Not that you would say it that way, forgive me. No, it may or may not be the appropriate thing to share, but it came out of the room. If someone asks, we understand union without union, but what does closeness without closeness and distance without distance mean? My darling, you're in it right now, and it's in you. If someone asks, we understand union without union, but what does closeness without closeness and distance without distance mean? And the Sheikh al-Akbar, that's a whole other issue, never mind. About the, did he write it, did he not write it, All right, so then the answer is, I mean that in these times of closeness and distance, you were not anything other than God. But you did not know yourself, and you were not aware that you were always who, without you. My emphasis. When you reach God, that is, when you know yourself in a way that is beyond all condition, you know that you are who. And you did not know before whether you were who or other than who. When knowledge comes upon you, and you know that it is through who that you know who, not through yourself. Suppose, for example, that you do not know that your name is Mahmud. You don't know that your name is Mahmud. Or that your name designates, it says in parentheses, your named is Mahmud. For the name and the named are in fact one and the same thing. Back to general semantics. Right, the map is not the territory. The pencil is not. The word pencil is not a pencil. So for the name and the named are in fact one and the same thing. And that you think that your name is Muhammad. If you then learn that you are really Mahmud, you do not stop being who you were. The name Muhammad is simply taken away from you because of your knowledge of yourself, that you are Mahmud, and you are only Muhammad by ceasing to be yourself. Before ceasing to be presupposes the affirmation of the existence of what is other than who. And then whoever affirms the existence of what is other than who, Allah, has attributed an associate to Allah. Nothing has been taken away from Mahmud. Muhammad did not pass away into Mahmud, and Mahmud did not enter into Muhammad or come out of him, nor did Mahmud become incarnated in Muhammad. When Mahmud knew himself that he was Mahmud and not Muhammad, he knew himself through himself and not through Muhammad, just using the names. Because Muhammad never was. So how could anything be known through him? If your name is John, you are called John, you are named, people name you, oh, that's John. And you don't know that your name is actually Peter, but you come to know Peter, and in knowing Peter, recognize that essential reality of yourself as Peter. Have you stopped being John in order to become Peter? Did you become Peter through Peter or through John? There's very, I'm trying to find some access point here for you. If you haven't read Ibn al-Arabi, it's a little bit harder maybe to make these connections, because she has translated what has previously been printed as "Whoso knoweth himself," which is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whoso knoweth himself knoweth his Lord. That's the literal translation.
His Rabb.
So it's limited in its very translating. It's limited. When we know the essence of our being, and there's still some aspect of ourselves that is looking upon it as if that individuated identification was the means by which we came to know that, then we're still in a state of disunion or separation and asserting and affirming an existence other than the only being, which we continually recite.
But isn't that a necessary intermediate state?
Sure. Yeah. You'll get there. No, I'm not. I don't mean you'll get there, I mean,
Because you have
We'll
to
get there.
sort of make a scaffolding to get to the, from
Yes.
where you are to the next point. So maybe you could talk about how to get to an intermediate point between what you're talking about.
do that.
Well,
practice.
this
Do that practice.
Yeah, I mean, practices are really building that intermediate scaffolding, as long as we don't transfer our neurotic holding patterns to the practice, which can be done easily. There's no question about that, but that's why we're emphasizing that it's not just doing the practice, but it's, you could say, what's called kavanah in the Hebrew tradition, or niyya in Sufism. It's the intention with which we do it, which is refined continually as we do a particular practice. Just saying bump, isn't going to make the world change. Like I said, somebody is like, chanting all these sacred languages would have brought peace on earth, would have been happened a long time ago. Just speaking more Arabic would make us better people. The world would have been safe for we'd have peace on earth with Sanskrit or Arabic or Hebrew or all these holy languages. These aren't magic formula, and can be used for one thing or another. So this sort of intermediary scaffolding you're talking about, Hakim, really is both spiritual practice and a more fluid and flexible attitude, this is Staffarlah, my point of view, towards constructs of psychology, of language, of these sorts of things. And that's why I continually tell people, hey, relax, it's just a story. It may be that what the story may be pointing us to is more real than the words itself. Yes, but relax, it's just a story, whether it's Ken Wilber's story of how it all works, or whatever, Ibn Arabi's story, or Plato's story, or any of these sorts of things. How fluid are words being used to point us towards a greater reality, so we don't just rearrange the bars of our prison.
And something about practicing is that it creates a groove, it creates an impression, naqsh. So the first time we do the practice, it's really unfamiliar, we're not sure we're pronouncing it correctly, all of that stuff is happening exactly. And then to return to it the next day, and return to it the next day, and the more familiar, and in a sense familial, that intimacy becomes, then that scaffolding that you're talking about is then you can follow it quite easily, because now you've accommodated what it is expressing and revealing itself bit by bit.
Any other questions? Probably have time for a little dance here. If there's another question, we can, on anything we've done so far.
Could you say again the name of the paper you were reading from?
That I was reading from?
Mhm.
Spiritual Training Through Music. It's a short paper, like 8 pages, 9 pages long. Probably you have it somewhere on your computer. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling all right. Okay. Thank you for asking. I had some wonderful healing help. Thanks to all of you. And I was just breathing, Yashafi.
Yeah.
What nice synchronicity.
Yeah, I was wondering, dance circles that I run around in Arizona, we seem to have a lot of trouble getting young people to come to them. And some of the people that I've met recently, like Tara Andre and Darvesha, who go to South America and Germany, and you, since you're from Europe, there,
Yeah.
you see there's a lot of activity there of young people in their 20s and 30s. And it seems like we just sort of have like tokens. We have Zoe here, but you know, anyway, I know when I go to wilderness, things like that, you know,
Yeah.
but even there, they're in their own separate little tents,
Yeah.
and there's no intermingling. I mean, I took my own kids in this stuff, and they said, you know, Dad, that's fine,
Yes.
but, you know, that's for you folks. You know, it's almost like maybe they have their own doorways into noetic experiences, and maybe what Sam brought through was for us in our generation. I mean, I grew up square dancing, and it's gone, but that's okay, you know?
It's somewhat of a my reflection is, and I'm sure Tasnim has her own, somewhat of a generational thing. When we were, you know, when I was beginning to dance, we were the youth movement, obviously, but there weren't that many people our age now dancing, let's say. You see what I'm saying? So it's partly a matter of framing. And as I proposed to the people running the Mendocino camp last year, it'd be better if you just called Mendocino camp the Mendocino elderly camp. And let the youth call their camp the Mendocino camp. Because it's partly a matter of words and languaging. You see what I'm saying? And empowerment using that.
We've actually discussed
So,
this.
have you? It's an odd, it's a screwball idea that's actually worth considering. And the more we empower people, you know, the more we empower people, they'll find for themselves. But I also believe that, as you're saying about this noetic experience, there may be some other evolution that this practice is going through that will be taken the next step by, you know, younger folks leading things and all of that. On the other hand, we did have the benefit of learning with those who were slightly ahead of us. So that was a good thing. And they learned the practice for a few years from Murshid Sam. I mean, most of Murshid Sam's Murids, or none of the Murshid Sam's Murids, studied with him for more than 4 years. That was the longest. And most of them for far fewer than that, like 2 years, possibly. So you don't really know what the effect will be of a person receiving something and then taking it, so to speak. And if they really feel the inspiration, then continuing it in that way, in their new way, you could say. But really it's a matter of empowering, you know, younger leaders. And when we have younger leaders, then younger leaders are going to be drawing younger folks. So I think it's sort of that. I mean, when I got involved with this stuff, I was 25. So, and I was on the board of the Rouhaniyat at like 26 or 27. But nobody talked about me being like the youth movement, because the oldest people were like 36 at maximum. So it's hard to think about it that way now. It's true. I mean, we started the Dance Network, and I don't know, we were like in our early 30s, you know. So it's all a matter of perspective.
You know, another thing has to do with being exemplars in whatever field, but we're talking about this particular area. If there's to be a forward movement in the consciousness of humanity, well, you know, Sam's beloved friend, brother friend from Theosophy say, you know, it can't be taught, it's got to be caught. But the person, that means they have to have it in order for you to catch it from them.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So if we have some concern about why are we not attracting whoever in your center, in your dance circle, it's maybe there's a lack of magnetism. Maybe the example is not quite cooked, so that it does attract of itself. You see, we're wanting to find means and methods. All right, so we'll have a publicity committee, and we'll have a outreach committee, and we'll, you know, all of these outer imposed rather than be the message. Be the message. Whatever it is in you, as you, that's what it is. That's what it is. So rather than looking, just my take, you know, from imposing from the outside, I really like this phrase, self-disclosure. When it is ripe, to use that phrase we've become so familiar with through Aramaic, when it is ripe, the fruit willingly drops from the tree. Instead of pulling it off when it's green or forcing something to happen. If these teachings are of importance, and again, speaking for myself, but I know my brother, I cannot rest knowing that in some way I have contributed to a dispersion, a dissolution in some cases, of something that's very sacred to me. That I have contributed to that in some way because I was green, because maybe there was some manner that someone picked up from me. That was what I was exemplifying.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't intend to be teaching that, but we're modeling all the time. And if we have lost sight of the depth of the inspiration, of the message of oneness, of unity, of compassion, of understanding, of loving, then I'm going to stop leading dances. I actually used to say this many years ago. I don't come to a circle as a dance leader. I come there as a bringer of the message. And it's a good vehicle. It works well for me. I know how to use this tool, and so I use it. But if I find that applying it is not really working anymore for that particular time or place, I'll find another tool. You see, again, it's getting caught up in. You'll go around the circle sometimes, and people will say, and this happened in New Zealand, we were going around the circle, and just introductions, and several people, and they were in fact a little younger than some of the rest of us, and they said, well, the dancers are my path. The dances are my spiritual path. This is the way, this is it, this is the big thing, It's a door. Come on in. It's a door. And hopefully, this moment, the extent of 48, 56 hours, however long we're together here, I tell you that since it became a possibility that Saadi and I would be teaching together again, my heart has been in a state of excitation and anticipation for this opportunity, because I guess I'm going to tell some little stuff. When I met Saadi at a Mendocino camp, he was doing the dance class. I've been leading dances in Los Angeles, and what I saw, now I want you to understand this. I'm not saying me hotshot, I understand how this works. I have an insight that the fact was, whatever realization, little r, whatever realization had come to me through the vessel and the vehicle of the dances and the walking attunements, etc. When I went to Saadi's class, I witnessed someone modeling that understanding, that realization. And I went, kin. And so we didn't have to work out a whole lot of details. All right, well, you're going to do this part and I'll do this part. That's also part of the magic and the beauty for myself of working with a brother, sister, at a level of realization that really doesn't need words. He's doing his work. I'm doing my work. And when we came together, because of that, because of our discipleship and our muridship, because remember, the context is tasawwuf. We didn't learn this somewhere else. It's here in our own home school that we learned it. That's what I think in the unseen. Sometimes I picture, quotes, God in a workshop, wanting to bring about a creation. Somebody else looking around, it's like, I'm going to need an awl, I'm going to need whatever. So looking around, that one's pretty, I think, I don't have one, but that one will do, I'm going to use that one. You know, so we were just prepared enough to be able to be of use and to work together in this harmonious way where, you know, there's the male, masculine, and blah, 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 and there's the female, and there wasn't any of that, but there was this blending of his feminine with my masculine with his feminine, you know, it's just been this flow. Outside of that was, I suppose, the formal identification with a representative of the Ruhaniyat, a representative of the Sufi order, and you know, they're separate, and we're blah, blah, blah. None of that was relevant. You know, none of that is important.
It was relevant to a lot of people. That's right.
Anyway, so.
And in addition, you know, from the Ruhaniyat side, I will say, just briefly, you know, we were having big crisis in the Ruhaniyat, and the four major teachers of the dances and walks pretty much were not on the scene at that point. Wali Ali and his first wife had divorced, and they were gone, and Muhyiddin and his first wife and Fatima were divorced, they were gone, and they were the people that were doing all the dance trainings and the walks trainings. It was pretty much all focused in them. As I said, it's not unfair to say that, you know, most of Murshid Sam's, all of Murshid Sam's disciples had to undergo some sort of process of being themselves more than they were Murshid, and that meant, you know, having families and jobs and occupations and doing things. And you know, Wali Ali was teaching alternative high school on the East Coast for almost 10 years and doing that. And you know, a lot of these folks, they just weren't around, so there was some real question about how the transmission, you know, not as being held by anybody or any order or anything, how it was going to survive. It was a real question involved. And as Tasnim said, I had exactly the same feeling. It's like, well, you know, like who's, you know, who could step up and possibly be of use and learn to grow enough to be of more use? Well, there weren't that many people that were willing to step up, actually, at that point. So, and to allow, you know, say, for the dances to fulfill their potential, not just as spiritual training, but also as a form of blessing, as Murshid writes about in Bestowal of Blessing, which, from my feeling, was as important as the spiritual training part, because we have other tools for spiritual training, but the dances, as Murshid said, were really intended to bestow blessing, the baraka, as the Sufis were calling. So in that sense, we were all more or less unripe, and all more or less ripe. But you know, we were ripe enough to feel some sense of intention towards what he felt, and okay, you know, that's where it went. You know, nobody's perfect, except, you know, maybe at the end of time.
Well, can I just say, like, how absolutely graced and blessed and honored I feel that you did step up. I mean, for me, it's just like such an incredible blessing, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
For both of them.
When I first discovered Murshid, I said, this is great, this is fabulous, wait till this gets out. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread, this is going to sweep the world. And I always think about the historian Howard Zinn, who says 8% keeps saving the world. And I used to be depressed about, well, 8% have to do this over and over again. But what's key is saving the world. 8% may be enough to save the world. And so now I also think, why isn't it 100 people this time and 200 people next year?